Thanks for joining Action News 5 to 10. I'm Joy Redman. An FBI operation ended in dozens arrested, including police officers, sheriff's deputies.
4:47 a.m., El Paso, Texas. The desert was still. No wind, no movement, just silence. The kind that comes before something irreversible. Then the radios crackled. In the span of 72 hours, federal agents across 11 states had identified 34 separate locations. They had surveillance photographs of 19 individuals operating inside what prosecutors would later call the most sophisticated cross-agency corruption ring in modern American law enforcement history. They had intercepted 6,400 encrypted messages. They had traced $214 million moving through shell companies registered in Panama, the Cayman Islands, and a quiet suburb of Guadalajara. And they had the names. The real names, not aliases, not ghost identities. The actual names of federal employees, men and women who had sworn oaths to protect this country, who had been selling it on piece by piece to the Sinaloa cartel and the cartel Jalisco Nueva Generacion. What followed would expose a wound so deep inside American federal law enforcement that even seasoned investigators would later describe it as the most disturbing case of their careers. If you want the full truth, hit like so this story reaches more people. It did not begin with a raid. It began with a body. On March 14, 2023, a 26-year-old DEA intelligence analyst named Marcus Reyes was found dead in his government-issued vehicle near a rest stop on Interstate 10, just outside Las Cruces, New Mexico. The initial report noted cardiac event as cause of death. Reyes was 26 years old, physically fit, no prior medical history, no note, no phone, no trace of what he had been doing in that location at 2:30 in the morning. His supervisor at the DEA's El Paso Intelligence Center filed a standard internal report. It was reviewed, timestamped, and buried in a digital folder that would not be opened again for 4 months. But Reyes had a partner, a 31-year-old ICE Homeland Security Investigations analyst named Sofia Carrillo, based out of the Phoenix field office. Carrillo and Reyes had been exchanging encrypted files through a secure government channel for 19 days before his death. She had copies, and when she realized what had happened to him, she made a decision that would eventually bring down an empire. She drove to the FBI's Phoenix Division field office on July 2, 2023, and she sat down with 2 agents from the FBI's Public Corruption Unit. She placed a 32-gigabyte encrypted drive on the table. She said 6 words. Once she said, "They are inside every agency here." What was on that drive took agents 11 days to fully decrypt. The contents were staggering. Reyes and Carrillo had spent 7 months quietly building a financial intelligence map. They had traced 34 shell companies, registered in Nevada, Delaware, New Mexico, Panama, and the Cayman Islands, back to a single coordinating node operating out of a private logistics firm in Nogales, Arizona. That firm, operating under the name Southwestern Transit Solutions, had processed over $214 million in transactions between January 2020 and June 2023. On paper, it was a freight consulting company. In practice, it was a financial laundry machine for 2 of the most violent criminal organizations on Earth. The map did not stop at the money. It extended into personnel. Reyes had cross-referenced financial deposits, made in Bitcoin, transferred through 3 separate cryptocurrency wallets before landing in offshore accounts, with the federal employment records of individuals in the DEA's El Paso Division, the ICEHSI Phoenix Field Office, and the FBI's Tucson Resident Agency. He had found 11 federal employees with unexplained financial deposits totaling between $80,000 and $340,000 per individual. Deposits structured carefully, always below federal reporting thresholds, always timed to follow major interdiction operations. Operations where seizures came up short, where tip-offs had clearly occurred, where shipments that should have been stopped had moved through without incident. Comment exposed below if you believe federal corruption has been buried too long. The FBI's Public Corruption Unit brought in the DEA's Special Operations Division and ICEHSI's Financial Crimes Unit. A joint task force was established on July 19, 2023, operating under the internal designation Operation Buried Line. 17 federal investigators, 4 financial analysts, 2 federal prosecutors from the Department of Justice's Organized Crime and Gang Section, and a single directive from the supervising assistant U.S. attorney. Nothing leaves this room until we are ready to move. For 8 weeks, the task force worked in a secure conference room on the 4th floor of the FBI Phoenix Division headquarters. The windows were covered. Phones were surrendered at the door. Every document was watermarked with individual tracking codes to identify any potential leak before it could compromise the investigation. Maps covered 1 full wall. Red markers indicated properties connected to the shell company network. Blue markers indicated confirmed surveillance locations. Yellow markers, there were 9 of them, indicated the home addresses of the federal employees under investigation. By September 3, 2023, the financial picture was complete. The $214 million moved in a pattern. Shipments, primarily fentanyl, methamphetamine, and heroin, would enter the United States through the El Paso and Nogales ports of entry. Before each shipment, encrypted messages would go to specific phones registered to federal employees, warning of imminent inspection surges or redirecting interdiction assets. The shipments moved through, the payments followed. Cryptocurrency to offshore, offshore to real estate to clean cash. The cycle had been running for an estimated 38 months. The narcotics alone told a story of mass death. Federal analysts estimated that the uninterrupted shipments facilitated by the corrupt network had contributed to the movement of approximately 4.2 metric tons of fentanyl into the American Southwest. The overdose statistics in Arizona, New Mexico, and Southern California had spiked 31% during the same 38-month period. Type yes if you want to see every target hit at once. The order came at 3:15 a.m. on September 22, 2023. Simultaneously across 11 states, 34 separate federal breach operations were executed. FBI hostage rescue team elements led entries on 9 of the highest-risk locations. DEA tactical units covered 14 sites across Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. ICEHSI special response teams executed the remaining 11 operations, but with U.S. Marshal Service fugitive teams providing perimeter support at every location: El Paso, Phoenix, Tucson, Albuquerque, San Antonio, Houston, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Denver, Chicago, Miami. In El Paso, at precisely 4:47 a.m., a battering ram struck the reinforced steel door of a warehouse on Industrial Boulevard. Flashbangs detonated in the entry corridor. Thermal imaging had already confirmed 7 individuals inside. Agents moved with speed and purpose. Within 90 seconds, the building was secure. What they found stopped agents cold. In the main storage bay, 847 kilograms of fentanyl pressed into counterfeit pharmaceutical tablets, vacuum-sealed and stacked in commercially labeled boxes marked as auto parts. 11 military-grade rifles with filed serial numbers, 4 handguns. It was a concealed room behind a false wall, accessed through a hydraulic mechanism controlled from a hidden panel behind a commercial refrigerator, containing $2.3 million in banded cash packed into 7 duffel bags. In Phoenix, agents simultaneously breached the headquarters of Southwestern Transit Solutions. The building appeared ordinary from the outside. Inside the executive suite on the 2nd floor, investigators discovered a server room disguised as a storage closet. The servers, running encrypted communication software used by both CJNG and Sinaloa cartel operational commanders, contained 14 months of communications, financial records, shipment manifests, names, a physical ledger, handwritten, with coded entries corresponding to DEA operation numbers alongside initials and payment amounts. The entries were meticulous, dated. Yeah, it's verified. Devastating. In Tucson, the target was a residential property on East Speedway Boulevard, the home of a 14-year DEA veteran, a supervisory special agent named Dennis Harlan, 46. When agents arrived, Harlan was awake. Cameras caught him at his kitchen window 11 minutes before breach, as if he had been warned. He was taken into custody without resistance. On his kitchen table, a phone with 47 recently deleted messages. In his garage, a safe containing $380,000 in cash, 3 prepaid phones, and a handwritten list of surveillance frequencies used by the FBI Phoenix division. Harlan had been on the Sinaloa cartel's payroll for an estimated 31 months. His total compensation, approximately $2.1 million. Share this video so communities understand what was hiding in plain sight. The scope of what agents uncovered over the following 72 hours redefined the investigation. What had begun as a financial corruption case became a map of systemic institutional compromise. In Chicago, a raid on a Pilsen neighborhood warehouse tied to a CJNG distribution cell produced 620 kilograms of methamphetamine, 180 kilograms of heroin, and, inside a locked file cabinet, 14 manila envelopes, each containing a printed organizational chart. The charts mapped the entire northern distribution network. They also mapped, in separate color-coded columns, the federal law enforcement contacts, handlers, the documents called them, assigned to protect each corridor. In Miami, surveillance had been tracking a Venezuelan national named Alejandro Moreno Vega, 39. Who had entered the United States on a student visa in 2019 and had never attended a single class. Moreno Vega was the financial architect. He had designed the cryptocurrency routing system that kept payments invisible. He maintained accounts in 4 countries: Panama, the Cayman Islands, Colombia, and the United Arab Emirates. When agents entered his Brickell Avenue condominium, they found 3 laptops, 2 encrypted satellite phones, and a wall safe containing $1.1 million and 6 passports, 4 of them American, all fraudulent, each bearing a different identity. Moreno Vega did not resist. He sat down in a chair. He looked at the lead FBI agent and said one sentence. That sentence, which federal prosecutors have since referenced in court filings, indicated that Moreno Vega believed he was protected, and that his contacts inside federal law enforcement had given him assurances. His contacts were already in handcuffs. By the close of September 23, 2023, the final numbers had been compiled. 47 individuals arrested, 11 of them active federal employees, 6 from the DEA, 3 from ICEHSI, 2 from the FBI, 36 others, cartel operatives, money launderers, logistics coordinators, and 2 officials from a Mexican federal law enforcement agency whose identities remain under seal pending international extradition proceedings. Assets seized, $214 million in identified offshore accounts frozen under emergency court orders. $8.3 million in physical cash, 4 commercial properties in Arizona and Texas, 23 vehicles, 847 kilograms of fentanyl, 620 kilograms of methamphetamine, 180 kilograms of heroin, 43 firearms, 6 server systems, and a 14-month encrypted communication archive that federal prosecutors described in their initial filing as the most comprehensive evidentiary record of cartel law enforcement collaboration ever compiled in a domestic federal investigation. The shock spread faster than news alerts. Inside federal law enforcement circles, the reaction was not surprise. It was something darker. It was recognition. Agents who had noticed anomalies, interdictions that failed without explanation, surveillance operations that seemed to go dry overnight, tips that arrived too late, and began to understand what they had been working inside without knowing it. If this exposed something you never expected to see, comment truth below. In the weeks that followed, internal affairs divisions at the DEA, FBI, and ICE launched parallel reviews of every major Southwest interdiction operation conducted between January 2020 and September 2023. The reviews identified 28 operations where the outcomes were statistically inconsistent with the intelligence picture that had preceded them. 28 operations across 3 years, each one representing a moment where shipments moved, where arrests did not happen, where the machine protected itself and the men it owned. Sofia Carrillo was placed in a federal witness protection program. Her identity is sealed. Her location is not disclosed in any public filing. She gave everything she had, knowing what it cost Marcus Reyes, and she made that choice anyway. Dennis Harlan was charged with conspiracy to distribute narcotics, bribery of a federal official, obstruction of justice, and providing material support to a designated foreign cartel. He faces a minimum of 40 years in federal custody. Alejandro Moreno Vega entered into plea negotiations in early 2024. The terms have not been made public. What is known is that his cooperation has extended the investigation into at least 4 additional individuals. Individuals not yet charged, whose identities are protected by active sealed indictments. The line between law and crime had been erased. Not quickly, not violently, slowly, methodically. Over 38 months of small decisions made by people who had convinced themselves that they were only bending rules, only taking what they had earned, only working within a system that was already broken. This is what corruption actually looks like. It does not announce itself. It does not wear a different uniform. It wears the same badge, drives the same federal vehicle, sits in the same briefings, and uses every piece of institutional knowledge it possesses to protect the network it serves instead of the country it swore to defend. The trust that makes law enforcement possible. The trust that communities extend to federal agencies, the trust that agents extend to each other, is not an abstraction. It is a daily decision. And when it is broken at the institutional level by the people most entrusted to preserve it, the damage does not end with arrests and asset seizures. 47 people are in custody. The cartel corridors that were protected by those 11 federal employees have been disrupted. The financial architecture that moved $214 million has been dismantled. But the fentanyl that moved through those corridors is already on streets across this country. The overdose statistics from 2020 to 2023 are already written. The families who lost someone to a pill that should have been stopped, they do not receive a press release. They do not receive a court filing. They receive a phone call, and then they receive a lifetime. This is not a story about bad actors in an otherwise clean system. This is a story about a system that must be watched, constantly, by investigators willing to die for the truth, like Marcus Reyes, by analysts willing to risk everything to tell it, like Sofia Carrillo, and by a public that refuses to look away when the people entrusted with power use it to destroy the very communities they were sworn to protect. Comment what you think below. If this investigation deserves more attention, hit like so this story reaches people who need to hear it. Subscribe because Operation Buried Line is not closed. Indictments are still unsealed. Extraditions are still pending. Investigations are still active. This is only the beginning.